Well, good evening, and I am excited to be here for another edition of Late Night Coffee Talk. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in week after week and sending very thoughtful questions. Look, I have been doing this online Q&A thing for quite some time, and I have to admit there are days when I come into it with a bit of apprehension. You know, everybody has rough days. But every single time I leave out of this thing just really excited. I don't know. I think maybe this does something more for me than maybe anyone else. And I know that sounds selfish, but I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Like I said, week after week. And so, for those of you who just tuned in and have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. This is that time in the middle of the week where I take a break from working on Texas independence and I come in here for yet another cup of coffee, fire up the cameras, and we have a conversation. You, me, everyone else who is watching. You get to ask me questions, and I answer the vast majority of them. And the ones that I don't, either you wind up getting redirected to a place where you can get your answers, or they wind up becoming articles like on the TNM website or the Texian Partisan, the official news site of the Texas Nationalist Movement, or even some turn into questions on the Texit FAQ at texitnow.org, right? So we try to get everyone accommodated through the span of a coffee cup, maybe one or two. Just depends on the questions and how in depth we get. But this is your chance to grill me, right? So let me explain how we do that. Then we'll just talk about why tonight is a bit special for me. So if you're watching on YouTube, easy peasy lemon squeezy, just drop your question in the chat. And while you're there, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Super chats are active on YouTube and as are YouTube channel memberships, right? So we've got some of those. We'll be thanking all of those folks here in just a little bit. But let me just go ahead and do it before I share the slide. Thank you to every one of you that have become YouTube channel members that help us continue to produce content for our YouTube channel and get the word out about Texas independence. We really do appreciate it. But anyway, drop your questions in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, right? If you're watching, we're streaming there on Facebook as well. If you're watching there, you can drop your questions in the comments and be sure to like and share while you're there as well and help us spread the word. If you're watching on X, formerly known as Twitter, many moons ago, you can comment and in the chat right there next to the video. Just ask your question there, and everything aggregates over here. And of course, as of last week, everybody on Rumble that's watching on Rumble, you're able to submit your questions in the chat there as well. So very glad that is finally done. So now that we've got all of our folks together, I mean, obviously different people chatting on different platforms, but there's always a lot of action over on YouTube. So I'm not trying to discourage you from being on whatever platform you're on, but there's always just a lot of action over on YouTube. So be sure to check it out. No matter where you're asking your question from, we greatly appreciate it. All right. So as I said, look, this is a pretty special thing. Oh, look, I think somebody just posted a message on TNM social about watching on Rumble. So awesome. You could even come in and chat. It'd be awesome. That being said, look, tonight we're 4 days shy of a date that I talk about all the time. I know you guys probably get sick of hearing me talk about it. But August 24th, 1996 was my line in the sand day. And some of you may be like, what does that mean? What does this mean? What is this line in the sand business? Right. And I'm not going to get into this big explanation of why I call it line in the sand day. I believe every one of us has a line in the sand day. Right. But It stems from the 12th day at the Alamo, where Colonel Travis drew his line in this. He explained the situation. He drew his line in the sand, and those who wanted to stay in the Alamo and defend it, knowing even knowing that they were going to absolutely 100% perish, but they wanted to be honorable. They wanted to do their duty, do the right thing. They crossed the line. Okay, so that's what I refer to it as. It is the embodiment of a binary choice, right? That proverbial fork in the road. One side is this. The other route takes you someplace else, a place perhaps of dishonor and shame. But the bottom line is that August 24th, 1996, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, was my line in the sand day. It's the day that I made my personal decision and commitment to work for Texas to become a self-governing independent nation, or die in the process, right? Whichever came first. And so I have been steady at it. So that represents, I'm not a math major, but in 4 days, it'll be the 29th anniversary of me making that decision. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I mean, the gray here and the lack of hair here may make you think that I'm a bit older than I am. But that is pretty much the sum total of my life. I mean, 29 years is longer. I have been working at Texas Independence longer than I had anything else, right? In the sense that, I crossed the line in the sand at an age and have been at it for a certain amount of time. I've been fighting for Texas independence in my life longer than I haven't been, right? Including my childhood years. So the entirety almost of my adult life has been spent in the pursuit and in the fight for Texas independence. And so I thought, I mentioned last week that I was not going to be in town next week, but I thought that I would do something and offer to you something that I don't offer quite often, right? We get on here and we get all the standard Texas questions. What's going to happen to Social Security? Obviously, one of those. We talk about the, currency, and we talk about sort of the Texas process, and we get asked about politics. And look, I know there's been a lot of political news today, and I'm sure, we already have some email questions about it, but, Chip Roy announced that he's running for AG. You got Dade Phelan gone. You got Stan Lambert gone. You got Briscoe Cain saying that he's going to go run for a newly drawn congressional seat. So we've got a lot of political news today, but I'm going to open up an opportunity that I don't, because a lot of times I do not talk about the early days, right? So pre-TNM, or even the early days of the TNM. It's a lot. And, frankly, there are just a lot of things that, for me, just they are, right. But there's not a lot. I don't dwell on that. I kind of focus on what's right here, what's right now. Sometimes we'll talk about 1996 because it gives context to why I do what I do. Talk about 2005, the foundation of the TNM. We talk about our first engagement with the Texas legislature in 2009 and sort of how that plan worked out. But I am going to open up the floor tonight. And so tonight is your opportunity. If you have anything that you would like to ask about those previous 29 years, whether it's the early days or anything else, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. Normally, I would just kind of be like, let's talk about something a little more relevant to today. But maybe some of that is relevant. Maybe you have a question. Maybe there is something from those early days that you want to know to help you maybe understand better your journey in Texas independence. And so I'm here for it. So drop your questions wherever you would like to drop them. And before I get down to this, let me address some of these that are already in here. James Floyd says he downloaded the new TNM social app today. Guys, James, welcome to the TNM social app. And if you don't know what he's talking about, let me just go ahead and do this thing right here. Let me hide that. Go to tnm.social and you'll be directed where you can create an account. You can go log in, or you can just go into the Apple store, the App Store, right? Not the actual Apple physical store, but go to the App Store or Google Play and search for TNM Social and you'll find it. It's a social network exclusively for people just like us. So James, welcome. Very glad to have you. Let's get this off the screen. There we go. All right, let's get to some more of these comments. Okay, Eric Riddle. Hey, thank you so much for the $50 super chat and for being a channel member. He says, challenge all on here to give something, anything. I think you just did, right? So Eric Riddle's challenging you guys to either super chat there on YouTube, or, look, if you're not on YouTube and you want to give a contribution, $5, $10, whatever, go to tnm.me/donate, right? You can go donate right there. There's a button there. If you just go to tnm.me, there's a donate button at the top. You can do that as well. But Eric, challenge accepted, right? I think some people have. So let's thank you for that. Here you go. Ron, he's gifted 10 channel memberships right here to 10 of you. So 10 of you who are not channel members just received channel memberships courtesy of Ron Raffoon. And Ron, thank you for that. And not only that, he's been a member. He is a channel member himself. And here we go. Ooh. Man, this is a good question. So your question, Ron, he asked, will you share what caused you to cross the line in the sand? And it's very similar to David Brunig's question. What was your line in the sand? Yeah. And also over here on X, No Snake says, what specific issue or issues caused you to draw this line in the sand? So let me just kind of try to take all these in combo, if you don't mind. Oh, you know what I also forgot to mention? You can email your questions into coffeetalk@vtnm.org. As many of you have done, you'll see the email address there at the bottom. So let me just try to take this, just try to understand, or I think break it down, the line, what the line in the sand was. So to address the line in the sand, first and foremost, I didn't draw the line in the sand. The line in the sand was actually drawn for me, right? And the line in the sand became that representation of, I guess you could say, fighting this a ridiculous fight to reform an irredeemable, or to redeem an irredeemable federal system, because that's where I was before. I was like so many other people, through their journey, kind of where they are now, or where they have been for years, right? I was there, right? I was there in 1994, 1995, and 1996. And, you get frustrated. You get super frustrated because you think, okay, look, we have this federal Leviathan just looming over us, right? And you fight these issues as they come up. It's like whack-a-mole, and you're fighting these issues. And as you fight those issues, you find out that, look, I might make a little bit of progress over here, or they may throw me some scraps from the master's table. But while I've been expending all of my energy and effort trying to fight this one thing, they've done 20 other things that all of a sudden now, we're behind the 8 ball. And it's just really the sheer size and scope of an out of control federal system. And so, if you look at that thing, if you look at it objectively, what you find is that, it's an irredeemable system. I know there are people out there right now probably watching that have some kind of hope that somehow the federal system is going to be fixed, and that genie is going to be stuffed back into the bottle, right? But that's just not reality. It's just not reality. And that realization is like, okay, what do I do, right? Do I stop doing what I think is right? Just give up, curl up in a ball and suck my thumb? Or do I just stay at it, knowing that it's going to be an absolute losing battle. There's got to be a better way. And so in 1996, I was presented with the idea that Texas could be and should be a self-governing independent nation. And it rang a bell for me, right? It was, this understanding. It called back to a book I've talked about on here often, Global Paradox, where it was written, I think it was released in like 94, 95 by John Nesbitt. He talks about the explosion of self-governing independent nation states. Went from 54 at the founding of the UN to, by the time of the book's publication, 192. And those people didn't have anything special. They weren't better than us. They weren't stronger than us. They weren't smarter than us. And in fact, across almost every metric, Texas was in a far better position than they were as far as being suited for independence. And so, when you realize that so much of the garbage that we have to deal with has an origination point, or even kind of comes through the filter of the federal government, then it becomes sort of a piece of cake. So I can't tell you, for those of you who have asked, I can't tell you that there was a singular moment. For a lot of people, there are. For a lot of people, there is this singular moment, or as Sarah Lowe used to refer to it, the moment of clarity. Something happens, and that is the thing. It's the thing. It's the one thing. But it never really is that one thing, is it? I mean, I want you guys to think about all of you, right? Your journey toward working for Texas independence. Was it ever just one thing for you? I mean, was it just, I can remember back people saying, okay, Obamacare is what did it for me, right? That's when I realized that the federal government was broken beyond repair. But was it really just that one thing? Or was it this steady accumulation of things, the death by 1,000 cuts? Was that the only thing that caused you to distrust the government? I can think back, and some people saying, look, what the federal government did at Waco was that moment for them when they realized something different had to happen. Now, granted, for a lot of those people, it wasn't Texas independence at the time, but they refer to that in terms that would classify that as their moment of clarity, or what happened to Randy Weaver and his family, or any number of things. But it never is just that one thing in isolation. You don't, if the federal government was working and firing on all cylinders and doing what it was supposed to and within the bounds of the Constitution, and it was just one thing, 99% of people would just say it's an aberration. The government will self-correct, and that'll be the end of it. But that's not what it is it? It really is that kind of final breach. And I equate it a lot of times to, if you're it's going to date me definitely as a Gen Xer, but it's kind of like Charles Bronson in the Death Wish movies, where he's in this crime-ridden neighborhoods or whatever. If you had somebody breaking into your house night after night after night, climbing in through your window, stealing your stuff, and then, you get sick of it. So one night you post up in your house and somebody climbs through the window and you blast them, you turn their head into a canoe. Well, it's not just about that one person getting into your house, right? It's the accumulation. So they may not have been the first person to break into your house, but they will definitely, very likely, be the last. And so it never really is just about one single thing, is it? But that being said, that was my moment. That was the moment. When people say, what was your line in the sand? My line in the sand was that binary choice, to commit or to ignore reality, right? To say, I'm in, or I'm just going to go back and I'm going to beat my head up against a wall and deal with futility. But, the truth and right are their own duty, right? When you commit to the truth, when you commit to a course of action, you stay committed to it. From that moment forward, Texas was my nation, right? When I understood the reality of how the Union was constructed. Texas was my nation, and I could not abandon Texas, my nation, no more than many people out there who couldn't abandon their nation, right? I mean, they couldn't. So Texas was my nation. I could not abandon it in its time of need, in a time when the assertion of our independent, self-governing character was a necessity, and really and truly, that necessity has only grown. So, anyway, yeah. So that's what it was, and that was that moment where I was given the binary choice. There were so many. And by the way, here's a non-related question, a statement from, there's also Rumble rants, which are Rumble's versions of super chats. That is good to know. Thank you for that. But that's really what it was. It really was just about making that choice. And some people say, man, you got to be nuts to be that committed to this sort of thing. Because it's something that it's cost me personally very dearly across every facet of my life, personally, business-wise. It was not always easy to be a Texiteer. Not by a long shot. But the bottom line is it's the right thing to do. And I think, as I have said in previous coffee talks over the last few weeks, it doesn't matter what other people think. You are responsible for you. And if your character, right, if your character is such that you believe in doing the right thing, then you do it no matter the cost, no matter what anybody thinks. I think it was Sam Houston who said, do right and risk the consequences. So that's where I'm at. And I can gladly say today that every morning when I wake up, we are one day closer to Texas being a self-governing independent nation. Now, I will tell you, for a decade, it did not feel that way. But every day when I wake up now, it definitely feels that way. So anyway, thank you to you guys who asked those questions. Let's go to some emails because I don't want to leave anyone out. Okay. This is from Rylan. Rylan asks, okay, I would ask then, what have you already done and what might you plan to do in the future to grab this growing demographic, talking about young men, of disenfranchised youth? For example, I don't see any group on TNM Social specifically for young adults, even though that might be incredibly valuable to the movement. Am I missing something in plain sight? Please tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know that you're missing anything in plain sight, but here's what I'll do. I will leave this to the, in legislative terms, to the will of the body, right? If you're out there and you are, consider yourself part of that demographic of, younger folks, young Taxians, and you would like a specific space or group on TNM Social, comment, let us know, and we'll make it happen. We have a tendency to answer the demand of numbers, right? So if people say this is something that they want, we have a tendency to accommodate. All right, so let's go to another one really quickly. Okay, here's one. This is from Michael. Michael says, I got this one early because I'm prepped for this one. Michael asks, have we abandoned trying to get a referendum via petition? The jury's out. Okay. Do we agree that online petitions are invalid? No, we do not. Other 600,000 plus folks who have expressed support for a referendum, have we had or do we have ongoing communication with them? Most of the people who I signed up deny ever getting anything from the TNM. This is going to be a fun one for me to deal with because I saw it come in early. So I'm gonna just say this, Michael. Let me just draw your attention to this. I literally, when your question came in, I literally went to the Texian Partisan website, which that's where we post all of our news. And I searched for the word censorship and just grabbed the last 4 articles, like the first 4 things that came up about the woes that we have had in communicating with our people. That's just the first 4. That's not including when we talked about it on Coffee Talk, or we've had podcast episodes about it. Or, I mean, look, these are woes of email, right, and social media. We've talked about it. As a matter of fact, I mean, the first one right there on the far left is an article that was published in Newsweek about the problems we're having communicating with people, right? And it's not our problem in us, not like we're not trying. It's that every time we turn around, big tech is trying to keep us from communicating with you and everyone else. So any of those folks that you're talking to that for sure have signed up, tell them to go check their spam folders, right? Because that's where it is. Or tell them to go sign up for TNM Social, because there's a lot of people communicating over there, right? But then some people are like, well, hey guys, why, how come we just can't? And I literally heard this the other guys. Why can't we just send a text message to everybody? Isn't that the way everybody's communicating now? Well, let me just explain to you how that works. Things have costs attached to them, right? And so I just grabbed, this is kind of an average rate sheet from one of the text message providers, right, that does the thing you're talking about. And so an outbound message is about little under 3.5 cents to send one message that is 140 characters or less. And so just to give you an idea, if we were to go and try to do that very thing, the 600,000 people that you're mentioning, that means that one message of 140 characters or less would cost us $20,400 for that single message. So, if we can't communicate at scale via email, which has its own costs associated with all the different, however many contacts you have, and we're not reaching people on the big tech social media platforms because they're stuffing our posts, we're not able to reach those people there, and that leaves text messaging. Well, that tells you that every time we need to let people know something, whether it's an action alert or new post on the side or whatever it is, that's going to be, a minimum of 20 grand every time we pull the trigger. Well, let me just tell you something, Michael. The donors out there are not supporting that sort of thing right now, right? I mean, they're just, we had somebody, the person who suggested this very thing to me the other day, I went and looked at their donor record, and they've never donated a single solitary dime to the organization. Things cost. And so could we move things around and maybe get one message out? We could, but what good does that do? I mean, if we can't afford to have by doing so, we can't afford to have a website for them to go to, right? Or that it requires multiple communications to get people to respond. So, things have costs associated with them. And so, we have been very clear about the challenges that we've been having, and it's no fault of our own. I mean, we're steadily every time trying to communicate. It's one of the reasons, and we talked about this before, why we launched TNM Social, so that our people could have a place that they could go to that would not be censored by big tech. Many of you are watching right now because you got a message on your phone that said that we were live, right? If you did, then sound off in the chat. Let us know, right? Because that's going to be the way that we do it. Everything we do, for us to be able to go out there and communicate with our people, we have to eliminate all the middlemen, all of them. Big tech, email platforms, these telephone, the texting we have to eliminate all those middlemen, and we have to establish direct connection. And that means not just us providing a platform like TNM Social, but that means those people helping us organize in local areas, and your friends and people you sign up plugging into that local, so that worst case scenario, if every route of communication between us and them is blocked, at least they have an in-person connection to the organization. It's one of the reasons that our organizational development guys are going nuts trying to get counties organized, because when the digital fails, what's left? Us communicating face to face in real life, one to one if necessary. That's how we win. Okay. So then Mike goes on, says, what is our best guess on when we will have the support from the people and in the legislature to get a referendum? So I went back in the archives. Deep back in the archives, like 2 weeks ago. And I found this for you. So the realistic likelihood is it's an inevitability. The challenge here is the time frame acceptable to you and to me and to everyone else? And who judges what that timeline is? Who determines how long this is going to take or how short of a time it takes? Well, it's not me that determines that. You see, Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution doesn't say that all political power is inherent in Daniel Miller. It doesn't say that all political power is inherent in the Texas Nationalist movement. It says that all political power is inherent in the people. The sole determining factor in how long or short this journey to independence is the people. And when more people move into the work mode than in the only hoping, only wishing, and only praying mode, that's when you see the timeline get much, much shorter. But that is something that is totally determined by the people. So there you go. There you have it. And that was an old one because my background's different, right? It's like 2 weeks old. So, all right. So here's one from chat. Texian Thomas says, in reference to the early days, Mr. Miller, it's very formal of you. Thank you. What did you say / do to win your first, I think you mean converts, to Texas independence? I will tell you, so that's a good question. Because let me think back to who the first person was. Oddly, it was my mother. God rest her soul, right? We lost her in 2001. But my first person was my mother. And that's because my dad and I crossed the line in the sand on the same day. Yeah, it was my mother, and I really didn't have to say much. So I guess that would be that'd be cheating. But I think the lesson there is a lot of times your first person that you turn on to independence is in your circle, right? The first conversations you need to have are, and you hear me say this ad nauseum, family, friends, co-workers, and other associates, right? I mean, this is something we talk about a lot. That's going to be your first pool of people to have a conversation with. And I'm going to tell you right out of the gate, you don't have every answer. When you hit resistance, you're going to just, your tendency is going to be to debate and be passionate, and you're not going to be prepped a lot of times to answer every single concern or question that they have, which is why I tell people, look, if you're approaching folks in your circle, which I think the studies say that the average person knows directly can maintain about 100 to 150 direct relationships. And I don't mean just randos that you friended on Facebook. I mean, people that are part of your daily lives, about 100 to 150. Those are the first people that you talk to. Those are the people that you're going to have the most in common with, the people that are going to be aligned the most with you, that are going to be the most likely to benefit from, your outreach to them, right? Because let's be honest, what we're doing here is we're not getting them to just join something to join something. We're introducing them to something they may have only maybe thought of or maybe heard a little bit about, but have never understood that it is a real viable opportunity and that Texas is well on the way to making that happen. Many people understand and have heard rumblings that Texas is on the path to independence. And I'll tell you a story about that here in a minute. Let me make a note about that. And, but they don't know there's an organized effort that they can participate in, or that they, should. And so that's why we make all these resources available. If you don't have the answer, you don't have to just say, hey, look, just go look at this website. Just go here and get your questions answered. Let's do this together. And so, I'm trying to think of who maybe my first one was. I don't know that I know the answer to that. I would have to really think hard about that, because it would probably be, I just don't know the answer to that. I can't tell you my first story of who my first conversion was, other than my mother. I know my cousin was there really early on. Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm going to have to think about that. Who beyond that circle? It might very well have been a guy that I worked with. His dad was an attorney in Henderson, Texas, and when the coworker found out that, when I shared all this with a coworker, he shared it with his dad, and his dad drove over from Henderson to our office, and we went to lunch because he wanted to get stuck in. So that might be it, but I couldn't swear to it. But that is a really good question, man. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's go back over here to email. Okay, here is one from Terry. He says, who among the founders of TNM are still active, and who besides yourself shaped TNM the most? Okay, those are really good questions. So let's kind of go through that. So November 2005, right, was when the TNM was founded. So at that time, there's about a half dozen of us. And that half dozen of us, that included me, a man named Warren Savage, Charlie Dorick, Kara was there, a couple of other folks. Okay, so the couple of other folks did not, once the TNM was started, they did not last very long, right? They bounced. So I have a tendency, I include them in the number, but really don't count them moving forward. Okay, and then we lost Charlie many years ago. Man, he was a bear of a man. After my dad died in 1998, there was a lot. Charlie was born roughly in that same era that my dad was, and so I'm not going to say that Charlie was a surrogate dad, but Charlie was one of the most. His name's Charlie Dorick. Don't ever forget that. But Charlie was one of the most loyal Texas nationalists that you could ever meet. I mean, he was just, like I said, a bear of a man, one of a gentle giant kind of, right? But he was just so loyal. I mean, if I learned nothing else from Charlie, it is that loyalty unto death. Not that was ever going to be an issue for me, but Charlie was. I mean, there was never a situation where you could ask him to do something. Of course, you've never asked him to do anything unethical or immoral or anything like that. But like, I can remember one time, Charlie was not a computer guy. We needed to get data entered into the computer. My children were really small. So he drove from Cuero to Longview, where I lived at the time, to come help with data entry. Not a computer guy. Like, I don't think he even owned a computer at home. I think maybe he had one, but I mean, he was not a computer user, right? Old school. And I can remember him sitting at my kitchen table, which oddly I have kind of taken apart upstairs right now, but he was at that kitchen table, and he's at the end, and he's entering these things because I'd set a computer up, and he's got these pieces of paper, and he's entering them into this spreadsheet. And one of my little boys went over and unplugged the computer, and all I heard was, "Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!" And yeah, so. But I mean, he would do anything. I can remember him driving from Cuero to Longview, and then he and I he hopped in the minivan that we had at the time, and we took off and drove to Lubbock, Texas from Longview. So he had made the journey from Cuero to Longview. We hopped in the ride together, drove to Lubbock to go have a meeting at a hotel where literally one person showed up. We had the meeting with the one person and turned around and went back to Longview. He slept, got in his vehicle, drove back to Cuero. I mean, that's ride or die, right? That's hardcore. So the other will be Lauren Savage. And Lauren was, if you ever needed to know anyone who thought outside the box, it was him. I could go into story after story about the old days, but he had a tendency to come at any challenges or issues from a completely different perspective. I mean, it just, when in those early days when we were so opposed and people were doing everything they could to just absolutely grind us to powder. When they would attack, he would come at it almost like, kind of like judo, and just come at it from such a different way that it just made it impossible. And so always with a quick wit and always on the bleeding edge. I mean, I can remember when right after we started the TNM, he and I would do kind of like what we're doing here, but every Wednesday night on this old thing called Blog Talk Radio. And the cool thing about Blog Talk Radio is it had call-ins, so you could call in. We would take call-in guests and questions. And so one night he went on a rant about John Cornyn. And, everybody now, almost to a man, admits that John Cornyn is just a waste of skin. I mean, the guy's just terrible. But he was on John Cornyn before anybody. And so I can remember he went on kind of a rant about something that John Cornyn had done. Now, John Cornyn's no friend of Texas, definitely no friend of our independence. And some guy called in and just had a meltdown, and Lauren just absolutely obliterated the guy. And he's like, "You just wait and see. You keep hanging on to John Cornyn, and you'll see what happens." And now everybody does. So Lauren was always really ahead of the game. And of course, we lost him sadly a few years ago as well. But if we're talking about, and obviously, Kara and I, right? So, but they're both gone. So Kara and I are the OGs. We're what's left of who was here November of 2005, and it's been a bit of a wild ride. So I don't know if your question though about who besides me shaped TNM the most, I don't know if you're trying to isolate it to those early days, or just kind of overall. But I will just answer with this, because I think it's an overall thing. I think that everyone, whether they're still here or not, has helped shape TNM in some way, right? And that's even people that have come up against us, right? People that have people that are not here with us, the Don Tiers of the world, and the Dave Mundys, and the Roger Evans, and the Dan Armours, and the good guys that did not get to finish the race with us, or people that decided, hey, there's a bigger, better, faster way to do this, and really did not understand how to run an organization. They bounced out and served as an object lesson to say, guys, if you think there's a shortcut to this, there's just not one. There's not a shortcut. You have to do the work, and you have to work it through. But people even that do the hokey pokey, they're in today, they're out tomorrow, they're back in a week from now. Those people help shape it too. Literally every, the things that have been fixed for us since day one, the name, our logo, our mission, and our principles, those have never changed, not one bit. But how we work to accomplish those, and the guidelines and the policies and the strategies and everything else, those have all been affected in somehow by anyone who has touched on us. And that's not just people inside the TNM either. You have intellectual influencers like the work of Gene Sharp or Dr. Thomas Naylor, or, even more recently, Dr. Matt Quartrup, or, people that are on this journey with us. that are not in Texas, but on their own self-determination journeys, like the George Constantiniduses of the world over, from the UK or some of these other places. So, just there's a lot. There are a lot of people that I think that have helped shape the TNM. You guys are shaping it right now by being right here and doing what you're doing. You are helping shape the TNM, and every one of you that have ever contributed, that have been a part of this. Let me just say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. It in the early days kind of felt like the six of us that kicked this thing off might be the only six, but we thought not. But some days it felt like it. So thank you for that question, Terry. All right, let's get down here. Okay, here we go. Big thank you to Chris Powell for his $49.99 super chat. Thank you. He says freedom isn't free. Everybody on here can give $5. 99% chance. Proverbs 4:23. What we think about, we become. You want to be free, put some skin in the game. It's not how much, it's that you gave. Amount is not important, it's heart. Those are great words, Chris. And I'll tell you, just to kind of go along with that, we obviously have to track donation amounts because we have bills we have to pay. But what's more important to us is when we look to see that somebody has. Like, it doesn't matter what the amount is. Like, that's why if you look at the missions on TNM Social, right, or what used to be on TNM.me, the mission is become a donor. It's not donate a certain amount. It's just become a donor, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, right? It's kind of the same thing. So, Chris, thank you for that super chat. I really appreciate you taking Eric's challenge to heart. Okay, $10 super chat from Alec Rawls. He says, tell Nate Smith. Well, you're technically, yes, I will be telling him, but you're writing this and I'm just reading it. He says, tell Nate Smith that he's the leader of Free Texas and the Hearts of Iron 4 mod, The Fire Rises. It reminds me when you were the Texan president and Make America Again mod in the same game. Okay, sounds great. I take that at face value. I'm very sure you guys know what you mean, and I'm sure others out there do. I sort of think I know what you mean. But thank you for your super chat, Alec. Okay, let's get back over here. Oh, man, you guys are piling them on tonight. Okay, this is from John. John says, from your perspective, can you talk a little about how Texans' reception on independence has changed from when the TNM first began? For example, if people are more receptive now than they were in 1996 and 2005. Yeah. So let me just kind of take these two distinct things. Okay, we're going to just take kind of the 1996 period. And then we're going to take the 2005 period. In 1996, there was a massive sentiment for people wanting Texas to become independent. And, that manifested itself in the Republic of Texas movement at the time. And, it attracted a lot of people. I think one of the estimates at one time was that the people that had signed up was in excess of 1 million, right? I mean, so it was serious. And if you look at the times, it's understandable, right? You had what fueled that a lot was the Clinton administration. Janet Reno as Attorney General, the big push for gun control under the Clinton administration. You had Ruby Ridge. I mean, you had a lot of things the federal government did that really freaked people out. And so Texans were, in general, very, very dissatisfied. And there was a massive push. Now, granted, the wheels fell off the wagon, but a lot of those people didn't need a lot of convincing, right? I mean, they were ready to rock and roll. Let's get it. Let's go, right? They were looking to get active. They were looking to fill a role. They were trying to figure. I mean, there were no passive people. I mean, I'm sure there were, but I mean, there are some people that are probably on here tonight that can speak to this, that were there at that time, that know what I'm talking about. Excuse me. There was an enthusiasm there, and of course, this is not the night that I critique what happened then. But the bottom line is that that enthusiasm was misspent, right? You had momentum, you had capital, political capital, you had the establishment really scrambling it on their heels, and it split, it flamed out because of personal agendas, because people that were in leadership would not set aside their own personal agendas for the mission. There was no kind of concrete, very clear, this is what we're doing, and you sign on to this thing or hit the bricks, right? You had grifters, and you had all kind of people that try to glom onto it, just like you do anytime there is momentum, right? With things like this, okay? So definitely wrong, as Kara would say, the wrong modality for getting the job done. But it was those 9 years after that really informed a lot of what went into making the TNM what it was, and how we did it, including that 2.5 year study that we did before the formation of the TNM about independence movements worldwide. And so, that takes us into the 2005 era. And I will tell you, the reception on independence in 2005 was not, we didn't run into like a ton of opposition. Like the number one question that we got was not Social Security. It was, you mean we can do that? That's kind of how it was. And we fought for the first 5-10 years, probably one of the greatest, biggest cases of national self-doubt that you could possibly imagine. That we would hear all the time, we can't do that. We would never be able to survive. And so, that was the thing that we had to combat the most. But, when you persevere and people see other people that are not afraid to get out publicly and talk about these things, and publicly advocate for them at great, at the time, at great risk to themselves, under extraordinary circumstances, being heaped with ridicule, at the end of the day, there are going to be people out there that it resonates with. And suddenly it becomes not well, can we do it? The question becomes, okay, well, how do we do it? And I would say that has been the greatest pivot from the foundation of the TNM to where we are today. The questions that we get are not about whether we can do it or not. It's about how it happens. And that's obviously where the Project Fear people have come in, and they try to make it sound impossible. Even some of these armchair academics that the media interviews have switched from that can't happen to, well, it'll be very difficult, right? And that is, I think, probably the most unspoken kind of underrated phenomena that's happened, has been the transition from it can't happen, it's impossible, to, well, it's just too difficult, right? And I don't think enough people really talk about that shift in the naysayers, going from it'll never happen to, well, it's just really, really difficult to make that happen. And because it's difficult, we shouldn't even attempt it, right? So, but do I think people are more receptive? Absolutely. And the way that they're receptive, to me, speaks that there is an acceptance on their part that it will happen at some point in the future. Their concern is really about how we get from here to there. So that's a good question, John. Thank you for that. Okay, so here's a message from somebody that was there in the early days. This is Jerry. Jerry is one of the OGs. Jerry says, I'm really happy we managed to find someone that has been able to carry the torch for as long as you have. I know I have grown tired of trying to carry this torch on more than one occasion. hell, even moved to the UK to try to get away from it. But I've come to the realization there is no getting away from it anymore. Thanks for keeping the light on, brother. Well, thank you, and glad you're back. It's really good to see your name on TNM Social and everywhere else, right? So, look, and thank you for that. I mean, there are very few guys from the old school that recognize what a big burden this can be. But I say that not like I'm some pack mule or like I'm Superman. It's just I'm just too stupid to know when to quit. At least that's what other people tell me, right? No, it's just I get it. This is it can be tough, but look, I'm happy to stick it out for guys like you, Jerry, and for everyone else out there. And some of you out there that are watching tonight, you may have done the hokey pokey before. You may have jumped in with enthusiasm and got tired of how long it takes or whatever, and then bounced out. Then you've come back. Look, I kind of feel like one of the early church fathers, John Chrysostom, when he gave a famous sermon on Easter, where he talks about those that came at the first hour and those that came at the second hour and on to those that came at the 11th hour. The people that show up even at the end are still one of us. Just I'm glad to see that there are going to be those out there that have some appreciation for how some of us went and hacked the path through the jungle to make it much easier on everyone else. And so, like I said, Jerry, it's very good to see your name, buddy. Oh, longy tonight, huh? Wow. Okay. The challenge has been accepted. Chris Powell did another $9.99 super chat. He says, I can't let Eric Riddle show me up. Thank you for that, Chris. And then here it comes. Terry Friedman says, with his $5 super chat, he says, here's my $5. Need to get away from the DC cesspool. You are correct, sir. And our perennial friend, John Bolgiano, $10 super chat. Thank you. And then Eric Riddle back for another $25.99 super chat. And then Chris Powell, not going to be outdone with another $19.99 super chat. That's so great. And then Lori Bruni with a $99.99. Thank you so much for your super chat. I did not intend for tonight to turn into a fundraiser, but you guys are making it a fun one. So thank you all so much for that. This is entertaining. And again, thank you to everyone, because this helps us. This helps us get things done. It helps us get content out there. We're running a fundraising campaign right now. If you go to tnm.me/donate, you'll see the Texan Arise campaign. So we can go out there and train campaign volunteers so that we can be sure to have proper representation for Texians in the Texas legislature. And so, this definitely helps out. All right. So let's get back over here. Okay, this is from Buddy. Buddy says, this is an email. He says, as a combat vet, I have my own approach to countering someone who says, but I took an oath to the Constitution. Is this something you get a lot, and how do you handle it? I used to get that a lot. I don't so much anymore. I think, and this goes back to kind of the very beginning of this conversation. What were some of the things that kind of got me to cross that line in the sand? And I tell people all the time, look, one of the ways I stay motivated is I wake up every day and I remember the things that blew my butt out of the box on the first day, that day that I crossed the line in the sand, the things that just tore me up. And one of those, and I've talked to you guys about this before, my dad was a veteran, right? He served in Korea, technically not in Korea. He was on a radar station in Okinawa, but during the Korean War, he served. And, and so, watching how he was treated by the VA and going with him to his appointments and seeing how other veterans were treated is a thing for me. I mean, it really, to this day, it makes me furious at the federal government. And I will tell you that we run into this situation. I think Daphne can probably, and I think maybe Nate was there too. I can't remember who all was there, but we did a speaking engagement at the Bulverde Republican Women, I think it was Spring Branch, Bulverde, that area, and literally it was a split bill. I spoke along with somebody from the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And during the Q&A, this guy gets up, he's wearing his Texas flag shirt. I think he calls himself Tex. I mean, the guy's a knob, okay? But he gets up and he starts ranting and raving about, and the funny mistake that he made was, do you think that, Davy Crockett would have drawn the line in the sand? And I'm like, dude, you were such a pretender. I mean, you were such a poser. But he made the terrible mistake of poking his finger in the back of one of our supporters. And it's like, if that guy touches any of our people again, he may have to be in traction for a while, right? Nobody is allowed to lay their hands on our folks, ever, okay? And that was the case that he was trying to make. I took an oath to the Constitution. Well, that's awesome, right? So at the end of the day, those people that say that is kind of the make or break, they cannot support Texas independence because they took an oath to the Constitution. It's incumbent upon them to then show how Texas reasserting its status as an independent nation is contrary to the Constitution on which they took an oath. And I think a careful review of that oath would, and looking at the approach that we're taking for Texas to become independent, very clearly show that what we do is not contrary to that oath nor to the U.S. Constitution, but that virtually every action that comes out of the federal government right now is violative of the other part of that oath and definitely violative of the Constitution, right? So, at the end of the day, when you swear an oath to an institution that does not honor its commitment, right? I mean, if you took that oath and your oath was to support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and the greatest enemy of that Constitution is a domestic one called the United States federal government, then really and truly, at the end of the day, if you took that oath, then supporting Texas independence is what you have to do. That's actually in support of that oath, to protect and defend the Constitution. Right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, are you swearing an oath to the Constitution, or are you swearing an oath to the fundamental principles on which that Constitution was supposed to protect? And in that event, I think it's important for anyone that has to wrestle with that to think about those terms. I don't presume to sit here and preach or try to debate anybody on that. That's a personal choice that they have to make. But increasingly, buddy, what we're seeing is that veterans who swore that oath realize exactly what I just said. They're coming to that realization on their own, that they are not leaving the United States, right? That they are not breaking their oath, that their oath was broken by the federal government the moment it decided to disregard the U.S. Constitution on which that oath is based. And so therefore, they understand that even if they support that, like if they still feel that oath is in effect, then Texas independence is a way to essentially preserve those principles. And if they do not believe that that oath is still in effect, they believe the same thing, that Texas independence is the way to preserve those principles and still continue to serve in that oath. So I would encourage any of you out there. We have a group on TNM Social that is just for veterans. I would love for you guys to go in there and just kind of tell your stories, right? I think you guys could probably answer Buddy's question much better than I ever could. What was it? What was your moment? How did you wrestle with that, and how did you come to your ultimate decision to support Texas independence? So head over to TNM Social and go into the Veterans for Texas group, and you guys hash it out. If you don't know where that is, go fill out your profile, check that you're a veteran, and it will automatically add you to that group. Okay, I am well over time, and I've got so many questions left. So let me just see if I can rapid fire some of these really quickly. Oh, thank you to Manny. He says, we are already winning. Thank you for your 99.99 super chat, sir. It is greatly appreciated. All right. Let's see what we got to do here, man. I've got to. I'm well over time, right? So I got to. Although, granted, I will not be here next week. So let me see if I can rapid fire some of these. Monica says, good afternoon. So you can tell us his email. This is my question. How does TNM envision maintaining Texas cultural identity while addressing the diversity of its population? You see it right now. Even the diverse population adopt the Texas cultural identity. I mean, it's just there. And here's the thing. That's not just me anecdotally saying it. There have actually been studies of this sort of thing. One of them I talk about in the Texas book, but there are definitely others. And so I think that's probably going to wind up being an article on the Texian Partisan. Linda says, will we get a different governor than Abbott? When Texas becomes independent, we will have a president. We won't have a governor. And who that is entirely up to the people of Texas. Levi, that is a long question. What is your understanding of our state constitution? Is it one that restricts an otherwise unlimited legislative prerogative, or is it one that establishes a government that may only do that which the Constitution authorizes? My understanding is that the Texas Constitution establishes a government with a limited legislative prerogative to those enumerated. Otherwise, Article 1, Section 29 would be an empty assertion of a restraint on the government. And that's from Levi. So, Levi, let me do this. Let me go find this one. Just so people can know what we're talking about, Article 1, Section 29. Article 1 is the Texas Bill of Rights, and Section 29 says this: to guard against transgressions of the high powers herein delegated, we declare that everything in this Bill of Rights is accepted out of the general powers of government and shall forever remain inviolate, and all laws contrary thereto or to the following provisions shall be void. Okay? So that's what it says. Article 1, Section 29. So, Levi, what your understanding of that is absolutely correct. It is absolutely restrictive. The powers that the state government has, each branch in particular, are only those granted to it by the state constitution, by the Texas Constitution. If it is not explicit, then they do not have the power to do it. And that is, look, that is just straight limited government 101, right? I mean, that's it. And so if you think about it from that standpoint, it makes a lot of things that happen here in the state government questionable, beyond questionable. It makes them objectionable. They will do a lot of things under the guise of being, well, we're empowered to do this in the Constitution, but that's not the way the Constitution reads, and especially, there in the Texas Bill of Rights. It is abundantly clear, right? And those things within the Texas Bill of Rights mean that it is, look, these things are not touchable. But yet we have, I think, a thought pattern that is developed at the state level that basically says they can do whatever the heck they want to do. And if we reject that, which we do as the Texas Nationalist movement, and we should as Texians who believe in limited government, if we reject that, then more so we should also reject the federal system. No one can complain about state encroachment on rights and give the federal government a free pass. And I think that this really plays into, as much as we have the rhetoric coming out of Austin about all the federal overreach, I think this definitely reinforces what we have been saying all along, is that the establishment in the Texas government, in Austin, essentially treats Texas government like a AAA ball club for the federal government, right? They're like Uncle Scam Jr. They aspire to be as corrupt and lawless as people are on the federal level. And, they can rail against the federal government all day long, but, look, when they draw new congressional maps, look at these same people all lining up to make the trip to Washington, D.C., right? And it's just that sort of, attitude that has crept in. It's why we have to seal off that sewer pipe that continually pumps its sludge from Washington, D.C. right here into Texas. So thank you for that. That, you know what, that might need an article. That might need an article on Texian Partisan too. Gerald says, "Congratulations, Mr. Miller, and thanks." Yeah, it's you know, the big 2-9, right? Let's see here. Kent says, "Where's Elon Musk? Has the TNM reached out to him?" We have not. Well, I can't say that we haven't reached out to him. It's just been silence on that end. But, you know, who knows what's going to happen. Sam Kemp made a call back to last week where we talked about the Sovereign Wealth Fund and the plan that we're working on, trying to get it finished up and turned into a full-on policy. He's saying, and if you want to know about that, there's an article about it on the Texian Partisan. He says, "Are there any plans to include the Texan token in the Sovereign Wealth Fund?" I can't tell you that because we don't have a Sovereign Wealth Fund. We're just trying to complete the policy document right now. But ultimately, it will deal with a lot of different things of value. So we can talk about that in the future. That is not for right now. And my friends, I think with a little bit of overtime, I think we have cleared the board. Wow. Well, thank you guys so much. Those were very thoughtful questions tonight. And I am quite appreciative of just all of you, not just for your questions, but for those of you that entered in a chat, that have talked about, have shared this, because I know many of you have. Every one of you that have tuned in, whether it's one time or you're here week after week, whether you've given $1 or $1,000 to the TNM, or you know, whether you're a member or just a supporter, or whether you volunteered 100 or 1,000 hours or just 1 hour, everything you do to help propel the mission of Texas independence forward is something, and we're very grateful for it. Ultimately, friends, I still believe, like I did in 1996. I hope I will say this: if I'd have known that I was going to live this long, because I honestly, at the time, advocating for Texas independence felt like a death sentence. I'll be honest with you. Very excited, but felt very poorly about my odds of making it to the finish line. But if I'd have known that I was going to wind up being at it this long, I think I probably would have taken better care of myself, right? Might have taken a little better care of myself. But that being said, you know, hindsight's 2020, but the smell is awful, right? So thank you all. From the bottom of my heart. I got to get back to work here because there's still work to be done, but I want to take a moment and thank our channel members. Obviously, our new guys are not on there yet, but you will be, well, obviously not next week, but the week after, because I won't be here. I'm traveling. I'm going to do something personal, which is so rare, right? I get to go do something. Karen and I are going to go do something for us, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And maybe, if you're nice, maybe I will tell you what that is. But I'm sure there would be so much judgment, so maybe I won't. Anyway, let's just say that it's going to be we're going to have a blast. But thank you to our channel members for your support. Also, a reminder: if I did not make this clear, if you want to eliminate big tech censorship and eliminate the barriers between us, not just us and you, but you and all the other TNM supporters and Texiteers, go to tnm.social. Go there now. Like, you don't even have to listen to my wrap up. Just go there, get signed up. Many of you already are. I think we're at what, 50 or 60,000 signups at this point. But get the mobile app downloaded, right? Go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Download TNM Social. Get plugged in. This is how we win. We don't win by being, you know, isolated and in our house and you know, texting from Texas and the rest of life. We organize together, we work together, and we win together. That's what we got to do, and TNM Social is at the heart of that. Additionally, look, if you haven't already registered your support, now's the time to do it. Go to tnm.me/vote, pledge your support. And just a note, if you sign up on TNM Social, it counts the same as pledging your support. So thank you for that. And of course, obviously, as I said, download the TNM app. You can go to tnm.me/app and just go straight there, download the app, and you can sign up there. And while you're at it, if you like the Texian Partisan mug that I was holding up tonight during this, you can go to get your own at the Texian store. Well, it's TexianStore.com. And you get your logoed merchandise there. You can get anything related to TNM Texit on the Texian store. There's all kinds of things there. I'm not going to, this is not QVC. You can go there. If you find something cool you like, get it. Proceeds go, obviously, to support the mission of the TNM. And, of course, look, news, TexianPartisan.com. I've talked about it. Head over there. Be sure you bookmark it. Check it daily, because you just never know when some news is going to break. Like today, I think there's articles still in the queue that are supposed to go up because there's so much news today. And we're very happy to have the Texian Partisan as our official news outlet. So, friends, that is going to be a wrap. I will see you in, Lord willing, in 2 weeks. And until then, I will leave you with the words that I leave you with every time we're together. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.